All right, let's talk about something called dry needling. If you've ever had that nagging pain that just won't quit, chances are you've probably heard of it. It feels like everyone is turning to it, but it's also surrounded by a ton of questions. So let's dive right in and, well, get to the point.
You know that feeling, right? That constant ache in your neck, or maybe that stiffness in your lower back that just ruins your day. It is so frustrating, and we're all looking for something, anything that actually works. So the big question is, could dry needling be a real part of the answer?
I mean, its popularity is exploding. There's no denying that. But you know how we do things here. We're going to look right past the hype and get straight to the hard evidence. So for this explainer, we are digging deep into the clinical research to figure out what the science actually has to say about all this. Okay, so first things first, what even is dry needling? Before we go any further, let's make sure we're all on the same page and get a really clear idea of what this treatment is all about. Well, the basic idea is actually pretty simple. A physical therapist takes this super thin, solid needle, and that's the dry part, by the way, because there's no medicine or anything being injected, and they insert it directly into what are called myofascial trigger points. A much simpler way to think about those, they're basically those nasty, tight, super irritable knots you get in your muscles. So how is this all supposed to work? This is where it gets really interesting. The theory is that when that needle goes in, it's doing a few things at once. First, it's physically breaking up that tight muscle knot. Second, it might actually be changing the chemistry right there in the muscle. And third, it can kick off this short-term pain relief effect just by stimulating the nerves. So it's this kind of cool mix of a mechanical and a neurological response. All right, so we get what it is, and we've got a theory on how it might work. But let's be real, the only question that matters is, does it work? Let's start with the short term. What does the evidence say about the immediate benefits? So check this out. This number comes from a really big analysis of the research. What it means is that for folks with neck pain, they saw their pain drop, on average, by about 2.3 points on a 10-point scale. So the big takeaway here is, yes, the research is pretty consistent on this. You get a real, measurable, small to moderate drop in pain pretty soon after the treatment. But, and this is probably one of the most important things we're going to talk about, dry needling is not a magic bullet that you do all by itself. The evidence is super clear here. Those short-term benefits get way, way better when it's part of a bigger plan. A plan that includes things like specific exercises and other physical therapy. Okay, so getting that immediate relief is awesome, right? But what about, weeks or even months later? Do those benefits actually last? Let's take a hard look at the long-term reality.
And this is where all the research really paints a clear picture. In the short term, yeah, you get that pain reduction and you can move a bit better. But once you start looking past that 12-week mark, the benefits, well, they tend to fade away. And you might be wondering why? Well, think about it. Dry needling is a passive treatment. Something is being done to you. It doesn't build strength or teach your body new ways to move. And that's exactly why, over the long haul, it doesn't really come out on top compared to active treatments, like exercise.
So you might be thinking, okay, if the benefits just fade, then what's the point? And that is a great question. This is where we need to kind of shift how we think about it. The evidence suggests the best way to see dry needling isn't as a cure, but more like a jump start for your car battery.
And here's what I mean by a jump start. The treatment can knock your pain down just enough to break that awful cycle we all get into, where it hurts to move so you don't move, and then because you don't move, it starts to hurt even more. Dry needling can open up this little window of opportunity. It gives you enough relief so you can finally do the therapeutic exercises that were just too painful before. And that's the stuff, the active stuff, that actually creates lasting change by retraining your muscles and building strength.
So we've covered what it is, how it might work, the short-term wins, and the long-term reality. Let's pull it all together now and come to a final verdict.
Okay, let's just boil it all down. The claim that it reduces pain in the short term, the evidence for that is strong. Improving how you function in the short term, moderate evidence. The fact that the benefits tend to fade over time, also moderate evidence. And what about that super important point that it's best when you combine it with exercise? Again, moderate evidence. This gives you a really powerful, at-a-glance summary of what the science is telling us.
Of course, does it work is only half the battle, right? We also have to ask, is it safe? And on this front, the news is actually really good. When you look across all the big studies, the data is pretty clear. Serious problems from dry needling are super, super rare.
So what can you expect? Well, some minor stuff for sure.
You'll probably have some soreness right where the needles went in, and maybe a little bit of bruising. But generally, this stuff is really mild, and it goes away pretty quickly. So, let's land the plane here. Is dry needling a cure? Absolutely not. Is it a useful tool? The evidence says a clear yes. It's not a magic fix, but it's a solid tool to have in the rehabilitation toolbox. So the final question is it time to add it to your toolbox? Well, ultimately, that's a conversation for you to have with your doctor or your physical therapist. But now you're armed with what the science actually says. You can go into that conversation and have a much more informed chat about whether this could be the right jumpstart for your recovery.